Just a few house items for today's forum on mindful movement for youth. So as I mentioned, this meeting will be recorded. We'll be sharing out afterwards the recording, slides, a certificate of completion. So please, if you can, stay for the entire forum. We'll have a survey at the end where we'll get all of your information to be able to send out some of those follow-up materials. So we'll be sending out all those goodies by tomorrow afternoon. Please try and stay muted if you can, just to eliminate any background noise as our presentation moves through today. We do, however, really encourage participation. So whether that's through the chat or just unmuting yourself, we would love any questions, thoughts that you have throughout today's presentation. So please feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to join in and have a thought. Any questions in the chat box, add them as we move through. There is access to a live transcript at the bottom bar of this Zoom call. I think it says something along the lines of show captions. So if you do need to enable that transcript, please do so at the bottom of your screen. And then just a few introductions before we dive in. My name is Ellen Sarkeesian. I'm the Director of Social Emotional Learning at Generation Schools Network. I direct our SEL programming in the state of Colorado. Recently, we've been expanding to other states in Arizona, Ohio. We've worked in California. And, wouldn't hurt to move into other places like Florida and Canada and Hong Kong. So we would love to explore those potential partnerships moving forward, but just really passionate about social emotional learning, the health and wellness space for students. And yeah, excited to be here today to talk about just a really important element of social emotional learning, which is around mindful movement.
Hi, everyone. I'm CJ Roberts. I'm a director at Generation Schools Network. It's pretty broad. I do several different things, but mostly under health and wellness. I love going into schools and working with a team of individuals on health and wellness goals. And I also support one of our curriculums at Generation Schools Network called Empowering Minds. So I'm super happy to be here and talk about movement today. And then we also will have Phil Galvez on. And Phil, do you want to give just a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you guys for joining in on this and taking time, especially in Florida. You guys are a couple of hours ahead of us here in Denver, right? My name is Phil Galvez, and we have a company called Interactive Media Design, which is an experiential company. And we've partnered with GSN on some of the wellness programming. We'll share more of those details a little bit later, but glad to be here.
Phil was known for getting silent disco started in Denver. So he's very fun, and we are always happy to work with Phil. And so we thought we'd bring him on as he has really explored areas in schools and his interactive and creativity. So thanks for being here, Phil.
So quick overview of what we'll be going over today. So we're going to talk about the connection between mindful movement and social emotional learning. So we're going to pull up those CASEL competencies and talk about connections and how they both benefit one another. We're going to explore and try out, so get ready to move a little, some strategies and resources around mindful movement, mind-body connection. And then we're going to go into Q&A with Phil. So he's going to talk more about his work and the benefits that we see with physical activity and all the amazing things he's doing. Do a closing activity. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we'll have that feedback survey for you all to complete. We just really appreciate any feedback with these forums. And it's also just a great opportunity to get your email and make sure you get all of those strategies and resources and recordings afterwards. So we're really curious what brought you here today. So when you saw, an email come across, or maybe your administrator told you about this forum, what interested you about this topic, or what sort of brought you here today? And go ahead and just drop that in the chat. We've got new ideas for morning movement in the classroom. Awesome. Ooh, okay, working with home learners. I've been doing movement with my students, brain crossover spheres, connecting. Yes, okay. Yeah, you're already doing a lot of that work. Amazing. New to the curriculum, we will be diving into some lessons and resources later today, so that's great. New to SEL, looking for ideas. We can definitely provide that. Learning new tips and strategies. Awesome. Come with an open mindset. I love it. Yeah, struggles with emotional regulation. Physical activity and movement can definitely help with that. I love this. Be better educators in the future.
I love the requirement. Thanks for being honest. That's perfect.
Yeah, we appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
Looking for ideas. Amazing. Oh, that's so great. Well, hopefully we can cover all of these things today. Really appreciate just getting your thoughts and hearing your why for today.
And to follow up with that, don't sit back too quickly in the chat with potentially your emoji options. How are you feeling right now? Any emoji you want to throw there, make it appropriate, but happy, excited, average, sad, mention that these are, you know, like just how you are currently feeling, and be honest. Good, I love it. Happy people here.
Ooh, I love that Erica has 3.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that all the time. Like I'm just a array of emotions constantly. Thank you. Keep them coming, you guys. We'll go into the next slide because we're going to actually work on that mind movement connection right now as we go into the rest of this presentation, and just work on a breathing exercise. So a lot of times we think that breathing isn't really exercise or anything, but actually drawing attention to your breath can really bring so much awareness into where your body really is and what you really need in that moment, or how you prepare for the upcoming thing you're maybe going to be approaching. So we're just going to do that right now, and we're going to just evaluate how that affects us. So we're going to ask you to just sit back, relax, have your feet comfortably flat on the ground, your back straight. I like to put my hands in my lap, but wherever if you have hand rest, that's fine too. And just draw attention to your breathing. Is it fast? Is it slow, shallow? Maybe all of you have this sickness that's going around in Colorado, and I hear it's everywhere else. Maybe you feel that. If closing your eyes helps, go ahead and close your eyes. Just take a second to recognize just naturally how you're breathing. How does that air feel? If you're in Florida, it might feel a little bit heavier than here in Colorado. Dry. Are you by a window? Is it cold, or is it warm? Are you by your fireplace? Are you breathing through your nose, or are you breathing through your mouth? Or are you doing both? Are you deep breathing, or are you just filling your chest? A few more seconds. Now we're going to really be intentional with our breath. So next slide, Sierra. We're going to actually do the square breathing. I don't know if many of you have done this or not, but this is something that's in our curriculum that you can do with your students. You can actually use your finger. So if you want to make that, if it's really big on your screen, you can use your finger to kind of track. And that's what I like about it. It kind of gives movement for students to really notice their breathing. I am a swimmer, and I will tell you, I have terrible breathing. I can't control it very well. I have to be really thoughtful about how long I hold it. And I hold my breath a lot when I'm anxious or worried or anything like that. So this is a really good exercise to calm me down. So we're going to do it right now. So if you want to use your fingers, go for it. But we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to do it one more time. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Hold for 4. I'm going to let everybody do that one more time on their own, just really quietly. Nice. Now do me a favor, in the moment right now, how do you feel? Is it any different from what you put the emoji in earlier? Are you a little bit more relaxed? Is your body calmed down? Or are you the same? It's okay to be honest. But real quick, throw in if you felt like you changed, throw a new emoji in. I am always really surprised at how much change physically in my body happens. I carry so much in my shoulders, and I do this as the day goes, and I do it when I exercise too, and I have to be so conscious about it. And that exercise right there always reminds me to relax and just kind of like let that oxygen fill my body. Next slide, Sarah. One more. So we're going to go into just talking about why all of this matters in education and in your students in the classroom and how that ties in with SEL. I don't know about many of your other states, but in Colorado, there is a direct tie to physical activity and SEL skills. Just recognizing diverse skills and performance in yourself and in others, that's a skill that you have to do, whether you're doing a intentional sport or you're doing any kind of other movement. Also just participation, cooperation, those kind of things, that's an SEL skill that can be developed through SEL curriculum. So there is a direct tie when it comes to standards and what we're trying to achieve. But we also know the importance of what physical activity can do for the learning brain and how we best prepare ourselves to receive information and digest information and then regurgitate information. The next slide, Sarah. The CDC is really forthright on how important movement is. Students who are physically active tend to have better grades, school attendance, cognitive performance, and classroom behaviors. I think we all kind of know that, and what we all recognize is that, yes, we have a lot of students that are interested in after-school sports, and now, sports is becoming quite an intensive thing. There's club sports, and it goes on and on and on. But what about the students that aren't necessarily interested in sports? And how do we encourage movement in different ways and variations? And that's something that we'll talk about today and things that GSN has tried to do and evaluate. Go ahead, next slide. So again, these are just some really interesting things that we bring up to how physical activity in your classroom can benefit improving concentration and staying on task in the classroom, reducing disruptive behaviors such as fidgeting. If you are an educator and you've taken a pause and let kids move and get their wigglies out and have seen that change in them to come back and redirect, that it's definitely evident. Improving their motivation and engagement in the learning process, helping to improve their academic performance, and in increasing their amount of daily physical activity. So we have kind of a quiz that we found interesting in just physical activity. So we have some blank outs here. I'm going to let Ellen kind of take us through this.
Yeah, and this actually was also pulled from some of the CDC research that we did together. And so this is kind of talking about like, what's the current state of physical activity right now in schools? So just curious from the audience, How many states do you think require classroom physical activity breaks in the middle or high school? So just middle or high schools, how many states do you think require classroom physical activity? Go ahead and just add that in the chat. Okay, so we've got like 0, 0, none, 10%, maybe 5, I hope 50, me too. Okay, Sierra, do you mind revealing the answer? No states. So no states require that in the middle or the high school. Our next question. So there's only one state that requires physical activity breaks in the elementary schools. One state. What state do you think that is? Florida, New York, California, Colorado. Okay. Sierra, do you mind revealing for us? Colorado. Yep. So Colorado is the only state that requires it at the elementary level. Only 11% of school districts require elementary schools to provide regular classroom physical activity breaks during the school day. So likely those school districts are in Colorado. This percent is even lower for middle schools and high schools. And then lastly, what percentage of schools have students participate in regular physical activity breaks during the school day? So what percentage do you think that is? 70? 0? Okay. 10. And it is less than half. So only 45% of schools have students participating in regular physical activity breaks. So this is really eye-opening. Says a lot about sort of the want, right? And also opens up our eyes, I think, to the need of how much physical activity should be brought into our school spaces. And although it might be more concentrated in the elementary schools and the middle schools, it's just as important in the high school secondary levels, which we'll talk a little bit further today on.
So I've been looking at these data points for a couple of years now, and it really makes me sad, especially as they get older, how percentage of physical activity goes down, and that's how we're kind of developing our students into adulthood, right? And what we really want to try to do and see is help them establish baselines and repetition and skills now that will take them through their adulthood. And we were really fortunate to partner with Phil from his Sound Off and create and through his creation of interactive media designs to create a remote recess is what we ended up calling it, because we went through COVID with it. It wasn't really designed with it before, but we thought, how do we get students to recognize that there's variations of ways to move and really fun ways to move, and that it really can impact your mood. And so that's what this is showing you. We're going to go over that program a little bit later, but we did want to show a little bit of the statistics of how much mood changed pre-class and post-class. So what you're seeing here on the left is a pre-workout assessment of a class. Let me see if I put the notes in this one specifically. We did all grade levels. We did, well, I should take that back. We focused mostly middle school and high school with this program. And so what you're seeing is most likely a middle school class. And you'll see here that there's a variation of moods: sad, mad, happy, and average. And then you'll see the post-workout is obviously much different. We've got a little less average and a lot more happy. And we were working with kids over several weeks, and that was kind of the typical response that we saw day to day. And it was really, really encouraging to actually be part of that and witness it. You can go to the next slide. And again, you can see the same thing here. You'll see that sad, average, happy, and that transition. We lost all the sad right after that active participation. And so there is so much research out there right now that that mood shift can happen. So if you're seeing a lot of students really struggling emotionally, try moving. Try and be intentional with moving. Try changing things up and see if you can see that shift in your classroom. Again, we'll share a little bit more on what we did in this class a little later with Phil.
Awesome. So we're gonna go into some strategies and resources around mindful movement and actually try some of these things out. So we're first gonna focus in on mind-body connection. So at the primary level, we have one example, and we're gonna try this out together right now. So either staying seated at your desk or feel free to stand up. And if Sarah, if you don't mind just clicking to that next slide there. So the overall prompt that we're kind of thinking through during this activity is, when we move, where do we feel it in our bodies? Okay. So I'm going to have everyone go ahead, raise your hands above your head. And now lean to the right side. Okay. And think, and as you're in this position, think about where you feel something. Are you feeling it in your arms? Are you feeling it in your back? Maybe in your core, your hands. Okay, now come back to the center and stretch to the left side. Again, think about where you're maybe feeling something. Is it maybe now in your neck? Is it in your arms again? Your back? Maybe one side feels a little bit tighter than the other. I know this side feels tighter for me. Okay, and then you can come back to the middle again and bring your arms down. So for just quickly in the chat, where did you feel sensations in your body when you stretched? Where were you kind of feeling things come up? Okay, so we've got back, shoulders. And yes, there was a question about, will this be available? We will definitely send out this slide deck afterwards. Okay, so we got shoulders, neck. Ooh, arm, we're at a flu shot. Ow. Side, upper arm, shoulders, neck, ribs. Yep. So a lot of different things. So we're now going to try something else. And I'm actually going to set a timer here. So this is going to be for 1 minute. So everyone get mentally prepared. We're going to run in place. Okay. So we're going to run in place for 1 minute, and then I'll tell everyone when to stop. Okay. Ready, set, go. It's fun to see people on the cameras. Keep going. You can go faster if you want. You can go slow, maybe a little bit slower. Maybe you're in a space where you can run in circles. Change it up a little bit. Keep going. 30 more seconds. Okay, I'm starting to get out of breath here. Keep going. Maybe go really, really fast for the last 10 seconds. And stop. Okay, stand still. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And notice all the places where you feel something. Maybe it's your breath. Maybe it's your legs. Maybe you feel your heart racing. Yeah, feel free to add in the chat. What are you feeling in your body right now? Could be your head. I'm kind of feeling a little sweaty. What are we all feeling? Okay, so chest. Oh, heart in my ears. Yeah, CJ. Heart racing.
My dog was staring at me so funny too.
Oh my gosh, it's funny. My dog just started freaking out. Is something wrong? Oh no, Erica. Head and legs. I kind of feel my calves a little bit. I think that's because I'm wearing like a shoe with a little bit of a heel, so that probably wasn't the best idea. Head and legs. Awesome.
I notice my hands too. Like I can feel the blood, like moving.
Yeah, me too. So this is a great strategy of how you can really, and this, yes, we're honing in here on the primary levels, but this definitely could be implemented in the secondary as well. But just to kind of get students thinking about when we move our bodies, whether that's really intensely, right, through running, or just what we did before, which was stretching, right, and kind of doing it in a slower fashion, we're feeling something in our bodies. Something is coming up for us. And as students are guided through this lesson around mind-body connection, we then start to talk about what happens when we experience different emotions and how do those show up in our bodies. So our next activity is actually at the secondary level, and that's kind of honing in more on what kind of emotions might come up for us in our bodies. And we're specifically talking about stress here. So Sierra, if you don't mind, just, yep, next slide, perfect. So to think about our body's response to stress. So in maybe for a lot of us, stress comes up as probably a negative emotion, right? But looking at this, this graph here, there is a healthy amount of stress. So when we experience a healthy stress level, it's preparing our body for optimal performance. It's a good thing, right? So as you look at this in the medium level of stress, you see that optimal there at the top. But when we're maybe going into higher level of stress, we maybe experience this state, first of all, in your body, right, where your heart is racing, you're maybe getting those sweaty palms. But when we have such a high level of stress, that's maybe not healthy for us. We become disorganized, we become anxious, versus kind of changing our mindset to seeing stress as a good thing. Like if you're experiencing stress before a big soccer game or before a test, you want to change students' mindsets to think of this as, this is preparing me for performance. Like this is preparing me to do well in soccer. This is preparing me for a test and I'm going to do amazing at it. So there is a healthy level of this for students. So this is really crucial graph just to help students kind of understand that stress is not always a bad thing. CJ, do you mind talking a little bit about the example you mentioned earlier today?
Yeah. So I actually really got to witness this. I was a swim coach for several years at a very high level. And what we were recognizing is obviously devices, right, have become a crutch in so many different areas of our life. And this is actually one of them. And I actually made a decision with my elite level swimmers that they were not allowed to play on their phones at a swim meet. They could listen to music and they could respond to their parents, but they were meant to be in that moment and to live through those emotions. And as a coach, it was me to help them, recognize those stress and keep it in a healthy level, because we can actually stress about the stress, right? But really what we were recognizing is we started to perform so much better when we allowed our bodies to feel those emotions and feel that anxiety and feel that and live through it and prepare ourselves. So if we were starting to get really nervous, oh, maybe that was time for me to go warm up, or that was time for me to stretch, or it was time for me to kind of move and start to mentally prepare for our race. And we were starting to see the results. And so we saw a huge shift in our times and the level of meets that we were making. And I do believe that falls in all areas and aspects of our life, including test taking and even, learning a new skill. Going to a new event where you're going to meet new people and you're by yourself, your first thing to do is to get on your phone because it settles your nerves, right? But maybe that's what we need. Maybe we do need to recognize that we need to prepare to have a conversation with somebody that we don't know, or we need to prepare our minds to regurgitate information for a test. And so I think it's our duty to teach students that that's okay, and that we have to regulate that by doing certain things to prepare for the activity.
Yeah, that's such a great example, CJ. Thanks for sharing that. And then this next slide, these are sort of screenshots from the Empowering Minds lessons. So we'll share this out afterwards, but there is a slide deck that comes with the Empowering Minds lessons. So this is something that you can project on your screen. Again, this specific lesson is at the 6th through 8th grade level. But these are just some great discussion questions that you can bring up with your students. So how do you feel when you're at your optimal performance? How do you feel when you have too much stress? Have you ever thought about the opposite of too much stress? So just really kind of get them thinking about some of these aspects and how they kind of respond to the research in that graph that we showed earlier. Then the next slide is another cool activity that you can do with students. So now have them start thinking about their own levels of stress and how that shows up for them in their lives. So you might have some things that stress you out a ton and then others that don't really stress you out as much. So this is an example of a student that said, maybe chores aren't really that stressful for me, but something like math, oh my goodness, that is like high stress levels, get super anxious. So just again, this is something helpful you could do in the classroom, and it also provides a lot of insights for you as a teacher to have a better understanding of what stresses out your students and at what level. All right, CJ, take it away.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about movement, and so we want to touch on just a few resources for movement that we have in the classroom. If you go to the next slide, Sierra. We obviously focus, especially in the primary, on a lot of breathing techniques for our students and mindfulness, but we have a lot of resources for the actual movement portion. This is actually found in one of our take-home. We do have some parent resources that go with our curriculum, and then also additional resources for the staff. This is actually one of the books, and there's a couple different options there, and then there's a couple of links for Good Morning Yoga on our curriculum that you can find, and I do have a few listed. So obviously yoga is really, really good. It's intentional movement, and it's really delivered in a way that's healthy for your body and in movements that your body's meant to move and receive. And so it's a really fun way. Most kids respond really, really well. Even if they kind of come off as not, they end up really enjoying it. We've seen that in the work that we've done in school. So that's an example. Next slide. These are also two actually that my kids use at home. P.E. Bowman, a lot of bad things came from COVID, but also a lot of really good things, and resources are one of them. We all had to be really creative, and movement was hard, and we knew kids needed movement. And so a gentleman named, with the last name Bowman, he's actually a PE teacher, created these great movements. They're really fun, they're interactive. He puts a bunch of visuals on, you have to jump and duck and push up, and it would be very easy to throw up on the screen for 5 minutes and do with your students. Even my little 3-year-old just stares at the screen, but every once in a while he'll duck or he'll jump. It's super cute. So any level. Also Cosmic Kids is fantastic. And I think they're based out of London or England or somewhere. And she takes kids through a story with yoga, and it's just very, it draws you in, and it's super fun. So those are great resources. Again, searching and evaluating something before you present it is always advised, but there's so much great stuff out there. And then when we look at secondary, I mean, it's endless. And I think what happens is we start relying on after school and sports to kind of cover, or we think, oh, yeah, the kids are going home and they're all doing their club sports or they're doing their own things. But we think that's really not happening. We're not seeing movement happen as much at home. And so how can we start bringing the concept back into for students, and what kind of different things can we start offering students that maybe don't like the traditional team sports or anything like that? So in our curriculum, we actually direct for a self-evaluation and teach students how to evaluate their health and their movement and what they like. And just like Ellen, I don't think you've gotten to that, Ellen, but Ellen's going to talk about kind of evaluating your stresses and kind of what you like. And I think it's important that students start recognizing that early. There's a couple top physical and mental benefits for exercise if you're needing to show students how important it is. And then we're going to kind of move into a Q&A with Bill with our remote recess class, because we really started to see a need for versatility in movement. and what we offered. So we Phil started using his headphones and came to us and said, what can we do? And we kind of created this program where we come in and we've done yoga, dance, kickboxing, all sorts of different kind of dance options, and have seen a lot of exciting things. So I'd like to bring Phil into the conversation, ask you a few questions. Hi, Phil.
Let me unmute. How's it going? This has also been really, really enlightening too. Just really quick, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Really love the whole curriculum, and it's totally resonates with a lot of this programming that we're doing. And so I don't know how many teachers in here or in the space right now in the room have applied any of these techniques, but they're really, I mean, it's so well needed. And just like you guys saw, the focus really isn't on children or just students in general doing any sort of physical activity. And so, you know, in my day, I'm like probably the oldest guy in the room here. We had PE all the way through high school. It was just, you just had to do these things. And I think we, you know, teachers probably felt like, hey, these students were a little bit more settled. We got all the squiggles out and all these, you know, because schools back then really just, it was a priority. You just had to do the thing. And now it's like, if children have to opt out, what we're noticing is they will opt out unless we give them some sort of opportunity. So yeah, I just wanted to circle back around and just say that the whole slide deck and everything that has been explained here is really important. And I think there's some easy to use tools that everybody here in the room can access and use in their own way.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate that. And yes, as you and I work together, we know the importance of movement and mindfulness and how beneficial it is to our bodies and creating a happy, healthier life. So I kind of want to ask you how you took your sound off company and maybe explain what you do there and how you've used it to help students kind of see physical activity.
Sure. So what we were doing before is utilizing the headphones, and it kind of was an accident that happened at a festival. We were at a wellness festival for adults, and there was music playing on one stage, and we had yoga going on another stage. It was a 3-day festival, and the sound that was bleeding from one stage was going to the other stage was really, it was just not jiving with yoga. Clearly, it's like if you hear sound, it's hard to do shavasana, and it's hard to like even focus. And at the same time, later that night, we were doing a silent disco because they also had a noise ordinance. So they had all these daytime activities going on, and as soon as it went to dark, we put on our headphones and did a silent disco. So I'm not sure if everybody in the room is familiar with a silent disco, but that's when it's basically a headphone party. Put on the headphones, we have 3 DJs, and you get to pick which style of music you like, and everybody dances. And it sounds kind of weird until you're engaged doing it. And it's like the most like interesting, crazy, fun thing to do. And it's really easy because most people usually live in their headphones. I'm wearing my earbuds. And most people you'll see even in their, you know, when they're out in the park or whatever, they put on their earbuds. Next thing you know, they're like singing out loud and they don't even know people are paying attention to them. So anyway, long story short is one of the instructors, or my partner actually said, you know what, we're using the silent disco headphones at night. Why don't we actually use them for yoga? So, and just see if it's noise isolating enough that we can actually do this. And it was a light bulb moment. And we built a whole business around that because it was really, really, really good. And we tested it out in many occasions in many situations. And yeah, so anyway, we realized that the headphones worked so well in that case that we started applying it in other fitness modalities, whether it's like, you know, outside doing yoga or whether it was dance class, whether it was kickboxing. Once you put on the headphones and add the instructor, you can hear the instructor and the music and the whole instruction to really kind of change the experience. And so that's how we started it, and have, you know, a lot of corporate clients, and then wanted to move it into the schools because we realized too that there was a lot of, you know, like at Core Power Yoga, one of the yoga classes, people were bringing their children to class. They put the headphones on their children, and the next thing you knew, the kids weren't running around. They're actually participating in the class. Again, another light bulb moment. And so we started practicing and testing out this whole theory with children. And from that, it just kind of grew into getting instructors involved, trying out different modalities, trying different age groups, creating all these different case studies, and then working with GSN so we can actually bring this programming out to the schools. So that's kind of that's how we came to be, and that's where we're at today, using the headphones.
Yeah, that's so perfect. And it really is such a fun thing to experience. And watching even the students do it is so fun. You think about, like, you know, when you really want to focus, a lot of us put headphones on, you know, and you can really see that with the students. They get a little quieter, there's a focus, there's obviously excitement and energy, but it's just a little bit more honing and a little bit more self-reflective. So it's been a great thing, Phil. And I just kind of want to ask you why you think this separates you from other maybe physical activities that schools are bringing in, whether it's during the day or after school, and maybe what you guys are providing class-wise to the students at certain schools and districts.
Sure. Well, we have a really great roster of instructors. These guys are excellent at what they do, and they're great with working with kids. So whether it's like a dance program or some sort of fitness programming, it's aligning and getting kids engaged two ways. You have to have like a really good instructor who's really good at dealing with children. And then we have really good music playlists, believe it or not, just like adults. We get motivated with good beats and music. Children are exactly the same. They're just many versions of what you guys are. So we've noticed that those two things really kind of dial in. So even, you know, children who would normally not participate, and I saw this on the graph where we wanted to see, you know, how many students were happy after the class. That shows a little bit of what we were experiencing. What teachers are telling us is the wallflowers, the kids who normally don't participate, those were the ones that were like the surprises. Like they were the ones who did not want to do anything, and now all of a sudden they decided to participate. And we really don't know how that changes their psychology of being a participant, how they feel included. And so those are the things you can't really kind of quantify sometimes. But we definitely saw that. And I think any of you guys as educators will say, give me one or two students that it was a light bulb moment, changed their experience, changed their day, changed their mindset. And sometimes that you know, to me, that is worth all of it. Sometimes those students are worth me doing the travel and doing the class all together. So without going off on a tangent, yeah, that's what kind of separates us, is that we're just identifying what the kids' needs are, what the children's needs are, and why they tend to opt out, and how can we focus on the handful that choose to opt out, because the rest are already opting in anyway, to get more inclusion, to get more activity. And we build programs around that. We identify, like, you know, where the school is, what type of music we should be having, what type of instructors we should have. We really kind of cater and curate that experience to these schools.
That's so great. So I'm answering one of the questions was, what if you didn't have a participant that wanted to or a student that wanted to participate? And I was telling them, we didn't make anybody do anything they didn't want to. We just asked that you're not a distraction. Either would go do a different activity. We oftentimes would have a table for a student that maybe didn't want to, that we were doing another task, or they could sit on the side. But we'll be honest, in the several schools that, and gosh, we did it for 2 years. We barely had any students that didn't participate. They really liked the headphones. And whether they did the movements or not, as long as they were like trying to participate, it just brought out happiness, you know, and it brought out an enjoyment and movement. And so, Phil, if you want to add anything to that, I think that would be great.
It did. And I mean, at the end of the day, whether somebody's sitting on the sidelines, we noticed that they weren't taking off the headphones. And even if they were listening, you know, we listen to podcasts, a lot of people listen to learn. And we noticed that that was what we were getting to. When a child didn't have the headphones on, they were completely distracted. They weren't as honed in. Even if, you know, by putting the headphones on, they were at least able to listen to the instructor, listen to the music, watch the activities that were going on. And since we wanted to have consistency as we were doing these 6-week programs, we would see a lot more participation by the end of the program. There was a huge difference, you know? So yeah, I mean, that's what we noticed. And then, I mean, every once in a while, there are kids who just don't want to have headphones. There are disruptors in general. And what we found with the disruptors is it didn't bother the students who were actually participating. You'd have the disruptors that were kind of running around. Nobody paid attention to them. And so sometimes that changes that behavior of a kid who's looking for attention to settle down. It was really strange stuff that we witnessed, and only the teachers could tell us what difference it made, you know? And that was even for the disruptors. That was our experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so good. What do you think you saw the difference, since you've done a lot of adult coaching, right? And adults that choose to actually come participate, and versus the kids that you coach. What do you think your biggest like aha coaching adults versus kids are?
To be honest with you, they're just little humans. They're just like us. I mean, I don't have children, and so I have nieces and nephews, and my youngest niece is 4 years old. And so she is the perfect person for us to practice all of these things with, and the really interesting thing is just because you're an adult doesn't mean that we know much more in our bodies and in our minds. We just know a lot of thoughts. We have a lot of data that's up here. But at its base level, emotions and some of these thoughts are the same with children as they are with adults. At least this is the experience that I have. So since they have less data going on up here and they have less experiences, I think that they're like more easy to get on board, like on board into these situations. They're more open to box breathing. They're more open to they're not as conscious, self-conscious, because they don't have as many bad experiences of being picked on or thought of in a certain way, right? And so the aha moments really kind of come in the fact that we get to work with different groups of children and we get to test it out and see if it works across the board. And I'll give you an example. We did adopted field day, and I'm not sure if anybody here has done something like that. So that's with like special needs. And there's 500 special needs students outside doing kind of like special Olympics kind of thing, and so there's all these different activities and we were included to do the headphones. And I was really curious to see how this group of students was going to, utilize the headphones, and if it was going to be the same for this group of students versus every other student versus adults, right? And it was exactly the same. The students put on the headphones and we did a hip hop dance class, and we did seated yoga, intentional yoga, where we actually used props so they can have something to like focus on. And both of those groups of students were just like, I was blown away at not only the participation, but how happy they were to like do this thing. So yeah, I mean, that to me was an aha moment working with specific students like that. But that's basically it. Again, it's like, to me, it's like seeing children behave a certain way or just seeing children. They're just mini adults, really, to be honest with you. We all kind of like the same things and want the same things, and happy is happy, sad, sad.
Yeah. I'll add the same something to that is the honesty. We would get so much more honesty, and we knew how to make adjustments so much quicker because they're just honest. They just
no filter.
Really share what they were experiencing. No filter, yeah. And I mean, we all know that, but now use it, right? Now we got to like implement it and take it for what it was. And, we saw this, so we were able to be in the classroom, but we also did it virtually too. So we have different variations of this. And so we've been able to kind of really get that feedback from the students. So student voice has been really important to us. Mm-hmm. The last question that I have is, I guess, what were you able to see what kind of physical activity had on the impact of students and in which ways you saw? And after that, I will open it up for anybody else to ask questions. You can write it in the chat or come off mute after Phil answers this last question.
Sure. Can you repeat the question again? It was.
Yeah, sorry. How have you seen physical activity impact students?
In general, just like you saw in the chart, it really is a positive. And it's just like when we're talking about like this mind-body connection, the mind wants to think and do what it wants to do. But if you can focus on what you're doing with the body, whether it's breathing or it's like focusing on any particular movement that you're doing, it gets rid of the mind chatter. And so the body itself, what we're noticing, knows how to reset and adjust itself. You know what I mean? It knows what it's supposed to do. And so the more people can do this practice, the more that they're going to see, even if they don't know why they feel better. That's the interesting thing. We would get these reactions like they feel better, but they couldn't actually quantify it or like emotionally tell you why and how, because the body did what it normally knows how to do. And it was regulated by focusing on how to create that regulation. Does that make sense? That's what we're noticing. And I think that's what we're talking about here when it comes to social emotional learning, is that we don't even realize that these practices do something to the body, even if the mind doesn't understand what it's supposed to be doing. And then it gives you some sort of result,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And it really comes down to the lifelong lesson we're learning of using physical activity as a punishment, when in reality, it's almost like a switch. We really should be like, oh, you don't feel good? All right, let's let's go move our bodies instead of you're acting up, give me 10 push-ups, you know, and really
The 10 push-ups are going to
reconnecting with
actually like benefit. Yeah, the exercise is going to benefit
yeah,
instead of looking like it's a timeout
right. But
or something. Yeah, we've been programmed differently, I
we're
think.
teaching them it's a
Opposite.
negative. Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
it's really just switching that like we can actually make this a positive movement, and we can actually change feeling bad to feeling good with movement. So it's been a real honor, Phil, to kind of walk through that with you and see it in person. And physical activity has obviously been a huge impact in my life, and I just love it. And so, and I know it has been yours. And so sharing that with people is awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Phil before we move on? That's nice, Candace. I so agree. Well, if you guys ever have any questions for us, I think we're going to leave a link, and you guys can connect with us. And Phil and I are actually going to be going after a grant coming in February. And so if you're interested in something like this, it would probably benefit us to have people that are maybe interested in doing a program like this. We get a lot of interest. We just have to get the resources for it. So Phil, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this. And
if I can add on to
always
this, sorry, I didn't mean to like take over, but if I can add on to this, since we have the, have the room here and everybody's here, one thing that I highly recommend educators and, leaders in your community is you can also do this stuff on your own. Like, if you're a seeker and a searcher for your own health and wellness, you want to take time to like do this stuff on your own. And we can't ask our children to do something that we don't practice ourselves and then expect them, because they can look through you. We've been in classes where it's like, if I'm not doing yoga, I have to do yoga because they're looking at me as a leader. They see this tattooed guy and they're like, oh man, if this guy is going to do it, that must be cool, And so one thing that I would, encourage you guys to do is go out there and find some of the tools that you guys need. And I don't know how many people are teaching classes and dealing with like, at least like K through 5 or, above. If you have these opportunities to do something that you can do on your own, add on to these curriculums, but find something that works for you. And, since obviously the school's not encouraging this and not going to, they're not going to enforce it, then it's going to be up to you as an educator who's dealing with a classroom of kids who are like crazy. And how can you give them a brain break? Even if it's a few minutes, what can you do? And like looking at chair yoga, looking at box breathing, taking 5 minutes out to like settle children down. These are things that we've seen when we see a whole bunch of kids running around. How can we wrangle them back in and do this? So I encourage you guys to just, get this program, but also just, go do some research on your own and then put it into practice for yourself. I think it makes us feel better to know that we're actually sharing the knowledge, experiencing it ourselves, and then being honest with ourselves instead of asking the kids to do something like do as I say, not as I do kind of situations. And that's all I wanted to add to that while I have everybody in the room.
So perfect, Phil. It's so true. It's so true. Thank you so much, Phil. Phil, stick on. If you guys have any questions we can ask at the end, we're going to move on to some commitments. Sorry, Ria, my email will be at the end of the slide, and then it'll also be in the email that we send out, so you can just respond to us and it'll get to me. So that's so great. Phil, Ria works for a school in Texas for the blind. That's so cool. Okay, so we are going to do some commitments. Nothing like evaluating ourselves to try to improve and be better. So we want to ask a question. You don't have to respond or put it in the comments, but this is just more for you. What's a piece of information that you want to remember? And then what is something that you want to do based on that information or based on this presentation that we set today? And maybe really commit to setting in your phone, setting a reminder, maybe include a colleague to kind of hold you accountable. But you could have something like, when I work out, I will self-monitor how I'm feeling before and after, something to recognize. I know that I definitely recognize when I'm upset or something. If I go work out, I cannot believe how much of a difference it makes in my thinking process and how I'm taking in information and how I'm just feeling. So take a few minutes to kind of think that through and maybe write it down and make a commitment to yourself. I'll let everybody just kind of think about that for a few minutes. Oh, I like that, Ellen. Ellen, you also have a very late soccer practice. I'm sure you could probably evaluate before and after there too.
That's so true.
I don't think I could stay up late playing soccer game anymore. All right, as you guys are thinking about that, we do have an offer we're really excited about. Here, you can go to the next slide. We would like to offer 15 minutes of our brain break videos that Phil has created through our partnership. They're about 15-minute movement breaks. We did create these hopefully for elementary and all the way through. So we really do feel like your maybe first grade on up would be able to do these 15-minute movements using use all classes within 2 weeks, recordings and access during class time and opportunities for feedback. So we wanted to provide, there should be 4 on the link that we're going to put. I will go ahead and share this in the chat. We will also include it in the email. But if you click this link and share this password, you will have access to these 15-minute brain breaks. And if you want to share feedback or anything like that, we do have a little chart here that you can provide your information. Ria, you could also use this link here to enter your information about remote recess and whether you would be interested in additional programming or information. You can include it there. But we would like to offer that to you all. If you are going to use the 15-minute brain break, it would be great if you filled in your information. We'd love to just hear back from you. We might send you a couple things like, hey, provide us some feedback. We're always trying to kind of elevate our game and add new stuff. So we would like to offer these to you. Sorry, Vicki, I was reading yours. So you mentioned these exercises are for person. I think you could totally modify, especially if you're comfortable with movement. I think that you could come up with your own. I think a lot of students will actually come up with their own. You just want to make sure that they're safe. But still, I can't remember. I know that a lot of our videos when we were in the remote space were geared a little bit more middle school and up. And so that's why we created these 15-minute movements, was to support the younger students. We had even some fifth graders do the longer classes and they were fine with it. So I really feel like the 15-minute movements will support the younger students. So if you guys have any issues with that, just reach back out to us. I checked the link and it was looking like it was all working just fine. And we'll provide that up for for at least the rest of the school year. We haven't taken it down. And then here's just some additional resources. This will be on the slide deck. We won't go through them today, but more videos on just the importance of physical activity, how it benefits us as just learners and people, young and old. And then I do believe maybe there's some movement options, some examples that you can use in the classroom as well.
And then just
let
to
Ellen take it over.
Yeah, thanks, EJ. And then just so you all are aware, we have other forums coming up. So starting in end of January, we've got trauma-informed teaching. This was really popular last school year, so we're actually going to have a 2-part series on this. So the first one taking place on January 31st, the second on February 16th. I just dropped a link in the chat to register for either or both of those forums. Even if you can't attend, go ahead and sign up so that you can still receive the recording, materials and slide deck afterwards. The next slide too, because we're just full of gifts for today. Maybe that's just because with the holidays coming up, feeling extra giving. But there is,
I love
are
it.
you aware of this? There is a free trial. So the lessons that we were sharing today and did some of the strategies with you all, Empowering Minds has a couple of free lessons. So you'll see here that mindful body is actually on there as one of the lessons you get access to, as well as mindfulness, relationships, and coping skills. So I will also go ahead and drop that link in the chat. If you're interested after exploring that free trial and potentially purchasing the curriculum for your school, let CJ or I know. We're happy to just even talk further about the platform and give you a little onboarding sort of orientation to what that looks like, and then can talk further about just pricing and how to get access, etc. So there's a link for that. And then this is just so you all are aware, Generation Schools, so both CJ and myself, we offer support around curriculum implementation, but also just overall coaching, professional development. So kind of like what we're doing in these forums, but we can actually provide virtual trainings for just your specific staff. If you're interested, we also provide in-person trainings as well. So these are just a couple more resources you have access to, things to explore if you would like to have further conversations about partnering together. And then last but not least, we've got that feedback form for you all. I'm going to add that one to the chat too, but just really appreciate any feedback that you can provide us moving forward. So give yourself a couple minutes if you have it to fill that out. We'd really, really appreciate it. And there's that for you. And that last slide is our contact info. So if you have any questions for myself, CJ, Phil, just want to talk about this further, we can set up a separate Zoom call. We're happy to do that. Answer any questions you might have. So thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Coming from all over. Phil, we appreciate you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Talk about all your work. CJ, my good old partner.
Always grateful for you, Ellen.
Me too.